This is the plaintiff, Richard Novick. He says he's a veterinarian, and the defendant brought his very sick dog to him for his help. He told the guy the overweight dog needed to be x-rayed and referred him to another vet who had a larger x-ray machine. A few days later, the defendant brought his dog to him for an emergency call at 10:30 p.m., but unfortunately, the dog was already dead. He ended up abandoning the body. He kept the thing in his freezer, and now the guy's stiffing him on the $421 he owes him. This is the defendant, Thomas. He says the plaintiff's a pet quack who did nothing to treat his beloved 13-year-old pit bull named Crystal, who died due to his neglect. The plaintiff's caused tremendous pain and suffering to his family. They miss Crystal dearly, and the plaintiff should be ashamed of himself because he did nothing to save her. He's accused of stiffing a vet. The defendant has filed a countersuit for $5,000 for pain and suffering.
All parties, please raise your right hand. Be seated. Come to order, please. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Richard Novick?
Yes.
Dr. Novick, you are suing Thomas. You've asked us not to mention your last name, and we'll respect that, for $586 in vet bills that you say he has not paid you for an animal that passed away. You are counterclaiming $5,000 for pain and suffering. Let me hear from you, Dr. Novick.
Okay. Thomas brought his dog in to me, was having problems breathing, dyspnea.
Okay.
Upon examination of the dog.
What kind of dog is this?
This is a pit bull, an older pit bull, somewhere around 10 years of age.
Okay.
The dog is grossly overweight and was having problems breathing. Upon listening to the chest, I heard fluid sounds, probably from a heart condition. I said that the dog was really too big for me to x-ray. My machine probably wouldn't be able to.
How big was the dog? Show me with your hands.
Dog was about 100 pounds, and it was very, very, very heavy.
Okay. Now, had you been seeing the dog? The dog was how old, you say?
Probably around 10, 11
and had
years
you
old.
been, would you please put your hand down? It will be, you're going to disagree with everything he says. It will be your turn. Okay. Now, the dog had been your patient for?
Yeah, I was treating the dog for probably 2 or 3 years.
Okay. So he brings you the dog in January. You tell him that you think the dog has a heart condition.
Right.
And do you refer him to a specialist?
I referred him to I told him he should see a specialist.
Okay. Do you have the notes from that visit?
Yes, I do.
May I see it?
Yes.
Hand it to my bailiff. Thank you. So
You have a copy.
Yeah, I know. I like to see the originals. Is this another copy or is it the original?
The original.
Do you dictate anything? How does it's just a piece of paper with writing on it?
I write it down.
All right. And very old school.
Very old school.
Yeah. So that was January 8th. On February 17th.
No, but prior to that, I called Thomas and asked him how the dog was doing. And they told me the dog wasn't doing well. The breathing was not much better.
Right.
And I said, well, you probably should take it to a specialist or back to me at least so I could see it. Now, I put the dog on.
Now, he hadn't paid for the January 8th visit?
No.
So then on February 17th, what happened?
Then about 10:30 at night, I get a call, a panic call. I'm outside. I'm outside your place. The dog is very, very sick. I have to bring him in. So I said, all right. So I opened the door, and what happened was, I tried to help him carry the dog, and the dog was so heavy that I actually fell down. He had I have to hand it to Tommy. He picked the whole dog and carried the dog in by himself. The dog was about 100 pounds. Put it on the table. Examined the dog. It was a faint heartbeat, no breathing. The dog. That was it. The dog died right then and there.
Okay.
And then
go ahead.
I said, Tommy, I have facilities to have the dog cremated. And Tommy says, no, I want to have the dog buried. I have someone who has a golf course and have a backhoe and this and that. So so I put the dog, I have a freezer.
A golf course? Someone's going to bury the dog in a golf?
Well, that's what he told me.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway,
so you put the dog in a freezer.
I put in a bag, right, and put him in the freezer.
The freezer. You have a freezer for precisely this purpose.
Yes.
Okay.
And every day he would call me and give me another excuse, saying that my friend is away today, he'll be back tomorrow, and the next day it was, I promise I'll get him the next day, and it was a promise the next day. For some reason or other, my friend fell in a hole, fell into quicksand, was taken up by Martians, whatever. But there were different excuses. Every day was a different excuse. I said, Tommy, this was after 10 days. I said, Tommy, if you don't pick up your dog by this Wednesday, I'm going to have him cremated, and it'll be $200. And he never called me, never told me anything, so they cremated the dog.
Okay. Did you ever hear from Tom again?
No.
Okay, let me hear from you. Can you stop staring him down and talk to me?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. It's just, you're right. I disagree with every single thing that he said. No, 99.9% of everything that this man just said is absolute lie.
Okay.
First of all, the dog was 8 years old. 8. Not 10, not 13. She was 8 years old. She did have an incontinence problem because she had been a rescue. They had used her for breeding. She was a very pretty dog and a big bone dog. So when they...
How'd she end up as a rescue if they used her for breeding?
They were using her to breed fighting dogs. They were trying to breed large fighting dogs. If you'd like to see some pictures of the dog, that's my son there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Being as Mr. Novick was in the neighborhood, I eventually started getting...
So you went to him in January because the dog had some trouble breathing.
Absolutely not true.
Okay, what did you go there in January for?
In January, I picked up her Proin. It's for incontinence.
Did you bring your dog in?
No.
Okay. Was your dog having breathing problems?
My dog developed breathing problems like approximately February 18th.
Okay.
He very briefly examined the dog. I wouldn't call it an examination. And he said that he believed she had a heart problem or an infection. He actually gave me some antibiotics that he had in his office. And I said that he believed it was a heart problem. And I said, well, what do I do? And he said, well, I'm going to find a bigger machine to take an x-ray. I said, well, is it a heart problem? Is it an x-ray? He said, it could be either, but
wait.
He said, I think...
X-ray's not a problem that the dog has. Clearly, this vet could not treat your dog for the problem. Did you take your dog to another vet?
No, we were taking the dog. We were actually in the car on the night the dog passed away, taking the dog to an emergency vet.
Right, but I mean, if you saw him, how many days passed between the time you saw him and the time...
4 days.
How many days?
4.
Okay, why didn't, during the day when it's cheaper, why didn't you just take the dog to another vet?
Because I was trying the antibiotics that he gave me that he said it was some kind of an infection.
Okay. So now it's the night.
In the interim, the few days passed, the antibiotics did nothing. The dog obviously had something in her throat. We were on our way to an emergency veterinary clinic. My son said the dog had stopped breathing. We were a block and a half, literally, from his office. I called him to see if he would answer the phone because I was going to try and do an emergency trach on the dog, but I didn't want to do it in front of my child. So I called his office. He was a block and a half away. He answered the phone. I said, I'm coming with my dog. I'll be there downstairs in 2 minutes, please. I got there. He came out and tried to assist me carrying the dog. But he wasn't able to walk, and he fell down on the street, literally dragging the dog with him onto the sidewalk, which is what my son was witnessed. I got the dog up and brought him inside, brought her, it's a female, her.
Okay.
He treated the dog for 4 years.
Talk to me, please.
When I got her inside and got her on the table, I believe she still had a faint heartbeat, but he said that there was nothing, that she had a massive heart attack and she was dead. And, you know, I guess I conceded that she wasn't, you know, her heart had stopped by that point. But it was like a struggle to get the dog extricated from him on the sidewalk. After that, we put the dog in the freezer. I told him I wanted to have the dog buried in the, you know.
In a golf course?
Well, a friend of mine owned a golf course, and they volunteered to let the dog be buried
That's
buried
sweet.
in the golf course because the dog was an extremely unusual dog.
Was the dog a pit bull?
The dog was an Alaskan pit bull, is what I was told she is.
Was she overweight at the time?
She had gained weight. She was a very large dog since we first had her. But then I tried to get the dog, and I went to his office repeatedly, and he wasn't there. And I called him, and he said he would be there, and he wasn't there. Then there came a night of the 25th.
That's a lie, Your Honor.
Hold on.
That's just
Hold
that's
on.
a lie.
Go ahead.
The night of the 25th, I told him I wanted to get the dog, and he said he would be there. I went there. He was not there. I waited over an hour and a half.
The guy lives there. Like the
Your
night
Honor,
you needed him when he was on
Honor,
2 seconds notice, he came right down.
An hour and a half I waited by his office. Eventually he showed up. He got out of a car. He dragged 2 black plastic bags across the street. And I asked him what he had what was in the bags. And of course it was pets that he had put to sleep. Then for some reason, the car that had dropped him off drove away. For some reason, he thought that they were still there, and he went back across the street, and there was a car there with children in the back seat, and he tried to get into the car.
That's irrelevant.
It doesn't matter that you object because you don't like his testimony. You need
irrelevant.
to be. I'll be the judge of whether it's relevant or not after I hear it.
He went around. He tried to get in one side, then he went around and he tried to get in the other side. By that point, the father got out of the car and started screaming at him. And I realized that something was very, very radically wrong. Then he started to come across the street, and there was traffic. There was cars coming down the street 50 miles an hour. And to be honest with you, Your Honor, I hesitated for a minute because I was very angry at that point. But I screamed at him, and I ran, and I pushed him out of the way of an oncoming vehicle. And then I said to him that I believed he was using drugs and that he had neglected my dog because he was using drugs. And I was so angry, I wanted to hit him, so I walked away. I got a phone call from him at 10:30 that night. This was at about 9 o'clock.
I mean, I don't know what to do, but I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have you disposed of. I can't keep you doing it any longer. You come here, you walk away, you don't call and taking a call. You're acting like a junkie, is what you're acting like. I've known junkies that act better than you. So, anyway, either call me or my fear exists, okay? Just forget me, okay? The dog will be disposed of, and you and I don't know each other any longer, okay? Okay, so either call me or don't call me.
Okay.
This is the
now,
message
that
I
doesn't
got
sound
from
like
him.
a guy who kept missing appointments with
This
you. It
is the
sounds like a
message I
guy
got.
who kept calling you and you weren't returning calls from him because he says right on that recording, you don't call, I don't know what to do, dog can't just stay here. I mean, you do concede it's rather unusual to leave your dead dog there all that time.
Your Honor, what I concede is that I had just accused this man of using drugs, and an hour and a half later, he's calling me a junkie on my phone. Okay. Your Honor, right now, I challenge this man to take a blood test or a urine test or a hair sample. I'll pay for it.
Okay.
And I'll take one myself right now.
Okay,
Good.
we're not going to do that.
Your Honor, could I just finish? He left this message at 10:30 at night. This incident happened approximately 9 o'clock. He says the dog will be disposed of.
What were you doing there at 9 o'clock?
I was going to get the dog.
Why didn't you just get the dog then?
Because I was going to hit him by that point because he was so stoned, and I realized that his being stoned contributed to my dog being dead.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Harvey Levin here. So I have a good question, I believe. Who has a better bedside manner generally? Human doctors or vets?
Probably veterans.
What? Veterans. I don't mean veterans, I mean veterinarians. Oh my God. I'm going back inside. I'm dead. I just can't do this.
I called at 8 a.m. He said my dog had already been disposed of.
Do you have proof that you called at 8 a.m.?
I don't know if I have proof on. I don't
You
think
should.
I have it
It'll
on
be
the
right in
phone.
your
I
cell
should
phone.
have records, but I don't have it.
Yeah, but it'll be right in your cell phone.
No, I have too many calls, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, may I say something?
No, well, I'm done. Here's how it works, okay? The first thing that happens is he has to prove that you owe him money. Then your defense to that is, I shouldn't have to pay for any of this stuff because he's a stoner and he probably killed my dog. But you have to prove that defense. You have to have evidence that something he did or failed to do was such a standard of care that was so below the industry standard that it caused your dog to die, okay? And that your dog didn't die of health issues. Okay, now stop and listen to me. So not only can you not prove that the dog died because of him, but there are 100 other reasons that the dog could have died, most likely of which is that the dog had a bad ticker. And, I don't want you to fault yourself in not taking the dog in those 4 days because you were hoping the antibiotics would work. I don't want you to fault yourself in not getting the dog in 10 or 11 days afterwards because the dog was, cremated and, that's, you can pray for the dog in your own tiny little whatever you build for it. But how is it that stuff is his fault, that you can prove it's his fault, so that not only do you not have to pay your bills, but you collect $5,000? And the answer is you can't.
Well, Your Honor, I guess we have a difference of opinion. I think that I checked with at least 20 veterinarians. Although there's no standard of procedures for a situation like this, every single one of them said that this dog should have had at least, at a minimum, some blood work.
Of course.
And an exam.
Sure.
My dog,
So why didn't you take your dog to another vet? Stop. This dog could not get an exam because according to him, he didn't have the capability of x-raying the dog. Look, you know where you're taking your dog to. This could work just fine, this arrangement, with this kind of small-time doctor who does all his own stuff out of his house. It could work because, frankly, vet bills are astronomical sometimes. I understand that. But when you have a dog who's breathing kind of heavy, maybe what you needed to do is take him to another vet and shoot the lock off your wallet. And when you don't do that, you cannot fault the small hometown vet that you have been going to. The x-ray didn't happen that day. There is nothing else to discuss. Put your hand down, you are done. So I find you liable for $421 in vet bills. As to your pain and suffering counterclaim, 0. That is my judgment.
Hold on.
Well, to feel in your gut that it's his fault and to actually prove it are two different things. Here, step around this way, turn this way, and tell me, what's your reaction to how things went down?
I don't think they worked out well. I think that there should be some standard for veterinarians. I don't believe that this man had my dog cremated. I believe if anyone looks in the newspaper at approximately that time, they found trash bags with burning dogs in them in Brooklyn. And I wouldn't put nothing past him at this point.
How much do you miss? Let me ask him, how much do you miss the dog?
For a drug test.
I miss the dog, but I try not to think about it. There's a lot of stuff to do. But it was so weird. He dropped the
my
dog. He didn't
my dog was still alive. He dropped my dog on the floor because he couldn't walk.
I don't think that helped.
Okay, head right around this way. Come on out here, sir. All right, step right in here. How do you think you come out looking in this whole deal?
Well, I think it was a fair decision. The reason I dropped his dog weighed about 100 pounds, and I had the heavy part, the rear end of the dog, and I tripped. But
not your finest hour in the treatment of this dog, or was there nothing you could do?
I told him initially that the dog should be seen to a specialist, and he didn't want to spend the money. Is what it was.
And you couldn't take care of it.
I didn't have the facility. The dog was just too big. I didn't have the facilities for doing that.
All right, Harvey.
Okay, this is a case where experts are essential. You're basically trying to prove malpractice against a doctor. You cannot do that without expert testimony. That will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case on the way into the courtroom right now.